So thank you everyone for joining me for this fairly spontaneous workshop. Somebody, oh, not just one person, maybe 2 or 3 people minimum said, there's so much happening with food and eating right now, almost being raised up. And then I was on a group call like last week that had nothing to do with doing the work of Byron Katie or questioning your thoughts necessarily. And everybody there at the very beginning was talking about they're gaining weight in their house and they don't like this virus time of the stay at home and it makes it tricky. And then a few people have shared memes with me that are out there that are kind of funny, not funny, about this suffering around food and eating, and that it's one place that we go as humans. And I certainly know that incredible pain because it got so crazy and off balance. All the focus was around food and eating and trying to find some lost balance that I had no idea where it was. And I thought maybe I'd never had it. I don't know. So just after a few requests, I thought, okay, we'll just do something right now. Let's just do something because it seems to be like the volume's turned up on this aspect of ourselves responding to reality, the conversation with reality, getting kind of intense and busy. And there's the refrigerator, and there's the cupboard and the food, and the only thing we can go out in the world for is food, So we will do the work here. So everybody, just double check and see if you're on mute, because I don't know if I can easily get you on mute, and that might help with background noise. I don't hear anything right now, but you can just mute yourself. And we will go off. So let's get ready to do a little work today. All right. And hang on, I am actually going to mute all. There we go. All right. So, sorry everybody, just getting it squared away here. Yeah, if you, there's a couple people on mute and I can't mute you. I mean on unmute and I can't mute you, so just muting yourself helps. That's perfect, thank you. All right. Okay, so please feel free to share in the chat along the way because I will check it. And let's go. Okay, so as we know, Byron Katie, my favorite person for doing self-inquiry because it's a simple 4 questions, simple but not so easy. She says, argue with reality and you lose, but only 100% of the time. So, as I mentioned, this one dreadful thought. I kind of like the Wizard of Oz metaphors, and I use them from time to time. That's what it feels like in a compulsion, like a tornado to me. And as I mentioned in our Facebook group and on the Eating Peace mailing list, this one dreadful thought seems to get planted with the seed, I'm not good enough. And then it's just assumed to be true. And it's so woven through our experience, at least that's how it felt for me. And I thought what we could do today is look at this, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable enough, I am not enough of something that's favorable, and where that starts. So what I intend to do is to offer us all together, including myself, but by the end of this time, in about an hour, we'll get a taste of how to be without this thought, because sometimes it's just so slippery. And as Katie invites us not to do the work on ourselves, and this is a thought about ourselves, and still taking a look at that and seeing what else arises to explore it, very useful for me. So we're going to use our own mind to find a little insight, or maybe a lot of insight. I like to think of this inquiry work as spell breaking. It's like a spell, you know, a magician waves a wand over somebody and it's like you're a zombie and you can't remember who you are, something like that. It feels like that when you're in a compulsion. So that's not unusual if you've had that sort of orientation. Really believing any stressful thought feels like a spell. I love that Ramana Maharshi said, all that is required to realize the self is to be still. Some of you might recognize some parts of these slides because I just was quickly taking some of them from a longer webinar I have on 5 thoughts to question around eating issues themselves. And I just condensed it and made it more simple. But I found that eating can become one of your greatest teachers. It has been for me. It has been for me. So the planting of the thought begins. When I talk to people who have eating troubles, and if we explore and do the work for a little while, and I've done this for myself, it's like, where did this fear begin around food? Worry about food. And at first I thought, you know, I remembered well this diet I went on with my mother when I was 14. And it's not uncommon for a lot of people to remember moments of doing something to manage food or do something, you know, with a parent. Like, we're going to do this together. We're going to start this sports thing. We're going to do this. And we're going to do that. Or a diet, directly a diet. And I definitely had that. But what was interesting is, as I sat and looked at first memories of this thought about dangers of food and eating, and really, I'm not good enough. There was a fear seed planted when I was only 8. My mother started going to these meetings called Weight Watchers. And I wasn't even sure, like, what is weight? Oh, weight is how the size and shape of your body. Oh, you can change that? Like, that's a thing that you want to control? You're not supposed to be certain weights and other weights you are. And my mother cares. My mother, who's the one that, you know, takes care of everything in the house and is like when you're 8, this person, maybe not perfect, but oh, that's a surprise. What I remembered was not so much like intense fear. It was just like, how fascinating. But I, at the time, was in Mrs. Reese's class, 3rd grade. And Mrs. Reese would give Reese's peanut butter cups to kids when they won awards or got a prize or did something right. And I came home with a Reese's peanut butter cup at about that time and showed it to my mother proudly. Look, I'm doing what you're doing. I'm not eating the thing in a package that's not allowed. And she said, how wonderful you are. And I felt so good because I got a huge gold star. And I started to copy her. Then I kind of forgot about it. It wasn't intense. She wasn't saying to me in any way directly that I should do what she's doing. There wasn't even a talk that I ever remember about my body should be a certain way, not at that age, not until a few years later. How many years later is that? 6 years later. But that was a fear that got planted. I see that what happens next with I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me. I could be the same as my mother. Wow, there's like, it's fallible. My mother, who's so wonderful, has something wrong with her. That could also be wrong with me. I love her so much. Okay. So I find the second thing that happens, this planting of the seed and then the growing of it, I suppose steps, as I've said, is I think, well, I need to gain control. I need to get some kind of handle on this. I need to get myself lovable. If I'm not lovable, if I'm not enough, I need to get myself enough. At least do that. And of course, not knowing that that's an illusion. I'm starting to work on a project that wasn't even true to begin with. And And I know some of you might be thinking, but it is true that I'm not good enough when it comes to food and eating. Just look at how I eat. It's terrible. Well, that might be a repetitive, stressful thought that you've had for a long, long time. And then third piece in that, as it grows and sprouts and seems to grow like a virus in all directions, very contagious, that it's a wolf really disguised in sheep's clothing. It's a disguised wolf. In other words, it will eat you alive. It will consume you instead of you controlling that. When you have that thought, it seems to start to run in everything. It certainly showed up immensely in my relationship to food and eating. I like to think of food, such an amazing thing, really. Nothing else like it except for air, perhaps, that we deeply take in, or energy, energy and people and understanding. We take those things in, we consume those things, take them in. But food, you become one with it in a matter level, like at the form of matter, dense. I mean, you are taking something outside of yourself and putting it in your mouth and chomping and chewing it up and smashing it up, and it becomes one with your body. So it's like it's like a total conversation, and we start to have huge trouble with that. I don't want it. I don't want food. I don't want life. I don't want this to be happening. I don't want anything to be happening. I'm just, for me, it got to be so distorted. So looking at that, in that planting of the seed of fear, I was seeking love, approval, and appreciation at age 8. And Byron Katie talks about those three things. She says this beautiful phrase: if I had only one prayer, it would be to pray, not to seek love, approval, and appreciation. Because as we bump into those, so painful, never ending. And I find the relationship with food and eating for me deeply had to do with feeling a lack of love, approval, or appreciation. Maybe even in other areas, but I may as well then, my body is under my charge. And so if I can get my body to be appreciative worthy, approval worthy, lovable worthy, then at least I've got a little bit of a chance. So all this focus on the body. But it started there. I need to just be connected. And for me, I don't want my mom to feel so bad. Wow, fallible, imperfect, not somehow feeling bad about herself, and that feels scary for me. That second piece, which is that illusion that happens of control, is this piece here. I'm trying to regain control when I have the feeling of I'm not good enough. Even though it's very painful, it feels like if I know it, I'll try to get back good enoughness. I can work on that. My mind really loves to solve problems. So that I can do. I will search the world and search the literature and find the teachers and do everything I can possibly do to get this good enoughness back. And so I've got at least something I can do. Getting my diet right, doing it the right way. I very much find that there's a whole perspective, like glasses on, that say there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. And it's very clear. It's very clear what the wrong way. Binge eating is wrong. Eating that certain food is wrong. Eating those other kinds of foods, that's wrong. Looking like that is wrong. Looking like this is right. Eating this way is right. Even thinking this way is right. We kind of categorize it. I notice that my mind really loves simple categorizing, ones and zeros, like a computer or something. So feels like I'm accessing something to be in charge. I can do something about the I'm not good enough suffering. And then that third place where it's being disguised as a wolf. So to say I'm not good enough, I didn't do it well, I'm so sorry, there's something wrong with me, this is my fault, not yours, has this little place, this or large place where it gets so heavy and weighted down, and the responsibility is so gigantic. The belief becomes something, instead of like an open mind, it becomes disguised as something I'm doing to like benefit myself or improve myself. But actually, there is, as I've also heard Katie speak to, ego is at play. I'm arguing with what is. I'm arguing with reality. I am arguing with the reality that appears to be me. Sometimes when I work with people with lots of addiction trouble, the first initial feeling, we have all these churned feelings and so much disturbance about how they feel, is, the rest of the world is fine. I've kind of forgiven them. I get why they're like they are. I know why my dad was like this and my mom was like this, and it was passed along to them. But it's me that's the problem. I'm the one that seems to be having the trouble, that doesn't do it right. And then there's this like crunching down on, yeah, so let's fix myself, which there's an illusion or just something that starts to make it grow into greater suffering. Never just okay. So let's do the work with this difficult thought aimed at the self. And here's the work of Byron Katie, and there's Katie. All right. So I really love noticing that the way that I'm eating, the way that I'm thinking about my body, is in response to the way that I'm thinking. I'm eating in response to the way that I'm thinking. So I had the thought first that was frightening. I had the thought first, I'm not good enough, I'm separate, I'm not lovable. The people will report this when they first remember ever going on a diet. Before that, they thought something's wrong with me. Sometimes that's the thing that kicks it off, trying to change something. Oh, I can change something with my food and eating and change my body and make myself more lovable. But you kind of have to be assuming that would be a good idea, and you need to be made more lovable in the first place. So it's an old thought for many of us. I find that just being curious and willing to be curious about this off-balance eating that I've been doing, curious about my body and my mental and emotional activity, is the first step to end eating wars. Just curiosity, willing. It seems to be just a terribly difficult thought to question. And I know the thoughts towards the self are difficult to question, but we can do it. So let's all do the work. Let's all do the work. All right. So first, find a picture, an image of yourself. Notice that you have to be kind of looking and seeing a picture of yourself. So maybe you're looking in the mirror, or you're seeing yourself have that overwhelming urge to eat or keep eating when you're not hungry anymore and you're already full. It's one of those moments that might have happened not so long ago. But just imagine that, you're holding that in your mind. There's this problem, and I've got food and my environment, my situation. So many people will tell me that they have trouble at night because during the day they're finishing their tasks, they're in their to-do list, they're busy, they're working, they're responding to other people. They're busy, sort of like a busyness that happens, and they're active and they have the energy to do it. And at the end of the day, when there's no longer a schedule, that's when the thoughts that are under the surface, that have been in there in the unconsciousness, kind of come out. Just, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I should keep doing stuff, accomplishing things. I'm not good enough just being here, just sitting here. or I can't just sit here. So let's all find that, just see that, see the picture of yourself, your proof that you aren't good enough. You might have so many different images and pictures of yourself, but I really like how this shows up in the body for those of us with eating troubles. You might have a picture of your body. I'm not good enough. So, willing to have that curious mind, willing to be curious. Is that true? You're not good enough. And you might even just be seeing yourself eating. Like I spent quite a bit of time with a body that would be considered athletic and strong and looks right, but there I am eating, obsessing and eating, binge eating. I'm not good enough. Is it true? So see what your answer is, your actual answer. And if anyone feels like it, you can share in the chat. If I can find the chat. It's so funny. Here, I got it. So it's great to have the second question. And so isn't that amazing? So many people find yes. I can even find yes. Yeah, I'm not good enough. You know, find that like I got upset about something. Oh, I'm not good enough. And Maya, I love that. Amazingly, I actually know it's not true, but the next minute I doubt it. That's great. Yeah. I love that this particular part of the work has the two questions. It's like sometimes I just love that we get to say yes or no from, I might even feel like a 3-year-old or an 8-year-old screaming or, I'm not good enough. Yes. Okay. And can I absolutely know it's true? Can I absolutely know this? And cat, I notice I'm not present when I overeat. Yeah, I like that. It's noticing, there's something, it's like my mind is in the past or the future. I'm imagining things. And Deborah, mentally, I know it's not true. And emotionally, I feel like it is. Which is just good to notice. Interesting, helpful to see the question, can I absolutely know beyond any shadow of a doubt, like the absolute truth with a capital T of this question, is it true that I am not good enough? When I really think about like it's the final answer, like that game show, final answer, um, I realize sort of really thinking about that, even with the question on almost anything, I kind of go, hmm, no. Yeah. Shauna, I can't absolutely know, like, who do I think I am, but I'm convinced of my own truth. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer with this. If it feels like a yes, like, you know, wow, I have so many moments of proof about this, it's okay. Just to watch the mind hold that it's true. I really am not good enough. Okay. Next wonderful question, and why it's so wonderful to ask it. Helpful. Why it's useful to identify this thought and sit with it. I am not good enough. What happens when we believe it? How do you feel? And Jean sharing, it's not true, but there's so many voices lined up to dispute it. Yeah, like a committee saying, but wait a minute, did you remember the time, or have you forgotten about, did you see yourself the other day? Uh, look, it's just very, the voice, like Annie Lamott, the writer, the voice that comes in like a radio station, very negative. And Maya, like shit. How do I react? How do I feel? Like shit. Yeah. And Kat, like I'm not mindful enough. Like I'm in a downward spiral. I'm out of control. Hopeless. Desperate. I like the picture of the fire alarm here. It feels like it starts to be an emergency because it builds. I used to feel like if I have the thought I'm not good enough and I'm getting tense and incredibly anxious, that I would want to grab and I would grab food. Like just, I have to settle down here. I have to do something. I have to eat something, eating. And then I feel fat and ugly. Teresa's saying, sad, unlovable, lonely, discouraged. Oh, Nancy, comparing mind, comparing to the past self. Yes. See myself in the past. Used to be better. And the ways I should be, images compared to others. And those perfect bodies, which we do see in our culture. Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting, helpful to notice in the movies and in the magazines and in the advertisements, and a lot of effort in the gyms. I don't look like that. Those people must have something that I don't have. And helpful to see, Sam, yeah. Images of how my body used to be. Then it was good enough and it's not good enough now. Even what it was like 2 months ago with Jean and Kat. Oh, so courageous to just notice that, share it with us. This is where I am right now because I overate before the call. That's amazing to just imagine being in this space. I overate before this call, so I have the feeling heavy, immovable, falling back into being overweight, inactive, sad. Stay with that because in a minute we'll get to another question. Just seeing it, and shame, feeling my clothes getting tighter and tighter, unacceptable, isolated, panicky, sense of urgency, obsessing about changing, says Willow. Images of quitting and giving up on a healthy plan. Thank you for being here, Kat, and your honesty. I'm baffled, says Jess. How does this keep happening? Why do I keep failing? Why do I do it all again and again? Yeah. So stressful. And just watch the suffering and all that. Immense suffering, very painful. And now just see what it's like between you and food. Just there's food when you believe I am not good enough. And for me, it feels like a battle. There's that thing that is pleasurable that has now become hideous. Feels so good to eat something when you're really hungry, and now No, it's just getting ruined. This way of being with food just seems to be, yeah, so hard. And Deborah, I shouldn't have it. I would notice for me, it became dangerous to be every time food came out, or food was needed, or there was hunger, or there's anything about food became like a trauma, like a fearful experience. Oh no, here we go again with the potential for not being good enough. I mean, it's already there. That's probably what's going to happen. More proof. And Shauna, I see food as bad and it will make me fat, even though it's a normal meal. Yeah, starts to be like even just a little bit is dangerous and my enemy. Some of us get like kind of sick stomachs and can't digest things, and kind of a gripping thing that is just contributed to when we think we're not good enough. Okay. And Veronica, it will make me fat and my body won't digest it. It has so many calories. I feel so stressed and guilty before I even eat it. Like I'm helpless, waiting for a miracle. And the thin me, says Nancy, is equal to or better than others. And the fat me is lesser than others. And Deborah, thank you, Grace. You just described what I used to feel around any type and amount of food. And I still see certain foods as a problem. Yeah. So just powerful to notice what we'll do. And if I just, people have said, how many times people have said to me, and I said myself, if only I could just take a pill and not eat, right? Like I will take myself right out of this thing that's supposed to be pleasurable. It just doesn't work. If only I could take a pill. And that's that thing, that in such deep discouragement, I will just not even participate. I just don't even, I'm not even going to do it. I refuse. It's like crumpling down in total failure. And well, I just found that's not the balance either that we're really looking for, that you're born with. It's just such a joy to take a bite of something guilt-free when you're hungry. You just find the balance of that. And I just find now I look back and I think that's what God, universe, reality wanted for me, is to find that instead of let's just not eat anymore. Okay. So very, very disturbing. For me, that it started at that age 8. There were all these threads getting born. And then it just moved into everything. And, we're in contact with food every single day. Life, reality. Food kind of says, life, I am alive, just to eat it. And troubling things happen with this. I'm not lovable. I want more love. It's possible not to be loved. I don't know, that just difficult to have something that is just the life force that's life becoming a frightening thing. All right. So Willow's sharing, food becomes more important than anything, even though I know I'll hate myself after eating it. Yeah. And food occupies almost every moment of my life. Yeah. It starts to get so big. It's taking up so much space. All right. I like this picture. It's like this. When I believe the thought I'm not good enough, body, the way I'm eating, all of that, it's like a swarm of emotions. Everything feels very, very intense, hatred, violence, emotional. I like that Michael Singer says this. He's so great. He says, this is from a paragraph where he's speaking about having this mind, the one that's aware, and then another mind that's just talking and chattering and has no, uh, doesn't care at all if you're happy or not. It's just talking, judging. And then Mikey says, but first, looking at this mind, this consciousness, but first you have to realize that you've been locked in there with a maniac. You've been locked in there with a maniac. Does feel like that. So in summary, with how I've reacted when I believe the thought, it's like this. It's been like this for me. I have to fix myself. I will do it right with food and eating or with anyone, with those people. I will have the right body. I will appear the right way. Like I will even act in the right manner. I need to fix it. I need to be apologetic if I've screwed up with somebody. I will do anything to be lovable, anything that it takes. I need your love because over here, I've just found out I'm not good enough. And I think Willow described it well. This picture kind of matches that. All right, so how do we get out of this predicament? The fourth question in the work, which is very tricky. I think it's worth spending a whole webinar time together on this one thought, I'm not good enough. Question is, who would you be without the thought that you're not good enough? If you were not able to believe it, if you weren't able to think it, and that's not asking you to just get there right now. It's just wondering, what if you suddenly forgot you're not good enough? So one way I like to think of that, be with that, is this very open space. I really like this that I've heard many times in the work. So I almost can't even remember when I first heard it, but if you're a tree, if you're like nature, if you're looking at a tree, let's see a very large giant sequoia tree, those ones that you can't even reach your arms around the front of it. You wouldn't say, oh, this tree is too big, it's not good enough. You'd say this is magnificent. And you'd also say the same thing about a tiny little wisp of a tree that's barely starting to grow. And if you were a tree itself, looking through nature, because humans are part of nature, so you're able to imagine being that. Or if you just are an alien from another planet and you just got here, I know we all know about being in the present moment. And it doesn't mean you must turn off your mind, because I tried that and it is impossible. But I can find very well where only a part of me is my mind thinking, and it might not even be my mind. So it's just making noise and talking like a radio station that's kind of annoying. But what else is here? So you can do this meditation right now. Who you'd be without the thought, I'm not good enough. Just look around your environment, wherever you are, and take it in as if you're doing that game that you might have played when you were a kid, which is memorize everything in this room, and then we're gonna put a blindfold on and you have to say everything that you can remember. Or they'd bring out like a box. Here's everything that's in this box, and you get to look at it and stare at it for 5 minutes. And then we're gonna close the lid of the box, and you get a prize if you say everything that was in the box. Just for the fun of it. So we can do that now. It's just like look around and see what's in your environment and really, really look like you're just studying it and memorizing it. It's sort of fascinating to just take it in. And if you find your mind busy, you can name it. It's like Katie's morning walk, couch, pillow, shoe, table, heater. I just heard my heater come on. Lamp. You just look around, taking in, just relax and even take in a deep breath. Cat's sharing, there's just silence, knowing peace. Chana, I feel where I am at is now, more of now. And I know that mind is, well, this can't be it. This isn't, this would be great if I could stay here, or do that. I don't have time to do this all day. But even that's just a thought. It's just a thought. So without the thought, I am not good enough. You can even remember, I liked this. I thought it was very helpful. When I was born, I don't remember having the thought when I was born. I don't remember having any thought when I was born. But we were a human being on planet Earth, starting to grow, already having grown out in the world. Looking around, being. So we're born that way without the thought I'm not good enough. And even learning to walk. We don't have the thought I'm not good enough if we fall down. It just begins to happen. But even with like that fullness, or just noticing food and eating without the belief I'm not good enough. Might even be okay however you've thought about food and eating. Like I know I can still find, wow, strange to not have the thought I'm not good enough as I look in all those years. It seems like crazy with the busyness of binge eating and food obsessing and freaking out. But often I do notice when I think that way, I forget that I had many minutes of not thinking about food and eating. Like when we say those kind of statements, I just think about it constantly. Well, sometimes you're talking to somebody else, or you're busy for a little bit, or you're sleeping at night. And Nancy, in my situation, without the thought, I'd be eating and enjoying it rather than eating without connecting to the eating or to myself. Now, what if we were free, and it's okay that you're free, freedom. Like, what if there's no right or wrong? So I love that somebody's little drawing of a blue pen or something got on the slide. It's just perfect. It's good enough. It's just right. So, like, just wondering this, staying here, staying in question four, being in question four, coming back to it. What would it be like to never think about what you're supposed to be eating tomorrow, or that you could do it wrong, or like even in an hour? Sometimes the voice will be screaming so loud, you should not eat, that of course you're going to eat. It's just like screaming at you instead of, because it almost feels like no choice. But if you're just, if there's not a right or wrong about it, it is okay to notice it's been off balance. I remember horrendous suffering. And the peace without the thought is what it's supposed to feel like. Losing that fear of eating. I love not being afraid of eating. And that it's okay to be eating. We're hooked up to be eating. So I notice too, without the thought I'm not good enough, it's like that's just one, that's a core seed that moves into this is horrible, you're going to get fat, you're failing, you're a bad person, you need to fit, all those kind of things. And then isolation and getting away from people and not doing other things that I want to do, that I'm drawn to. So just enjoying it innocently. And it's kind of a short, that's okay too. Short. It's not, in some ways, it's not all that many bites, joyful, and then kind of moving to next, relaxed. There's lots of judgment when I have thought I'm not good enough, that what I want to eat is not good enough. What I want is not good enough. So, paraphrase from Katie. The ego's life is about moving you from the awareness of what you are, which is just that present, like looking around, taking in everything. There's so much stuff in this room, I noticed, where I am right now, with my eyes and the sounds, even the smells and the feeling, contact, legs contacting chair. And Katie says, be awake to the not now. So that's those thoughts that are not now. Future, past, future, past, future, past, future, past. But noticing the now. So let's find the turnarounds. Let's find the turnarounds. And you could spend, an entire 3 days just in wondering what it's like to be without the thought, I'm not good enough, when it comes to food and eating. So just noticing that. Okay. And Jean bring up a good point. She says there's certain foods that when I eat them, I suffer due to a medical condition. So yeah, this isn't too about, it's about freedom to notice that like if you're allergic, can't eat something, doesn't work to eat something, then it'd be kind not to eat it. Free to be kind to yourself and just accepting, relaxed, noticing that. So turning the thought around, which is the last step. I am good enough, certainly good enough to be here, listening to this, being here in this moment, breathing in the space, born, alive. Must be enough. And my thoughts are not good enough, especially when it comes to, looking at me. And I love noticing I'm arguing with reality. if I'm attacking myself. And like Katie said, the quote at the beginning, I lose 100% of the time. So I lose if I argue with reality, which includes me. Turning the thought around, I am neither good nor bad. I am neither good enough or bad enough. But it's funny, it's sometimes very interesting to look at I'm not bad enough. Like I'm going to be really intense about being bad enough so that like something expresses my intensity. So sometimes that works for people to consider that one. I just like noticing as the concept gets shorter and as the concept gets undone, like it is when you're just looking around the room and you're just taking it all in as if to memorize it, like, oh, I'm just gonna take this whole room in so I could remember it later, just see it, take it all in, look at all the things here. It would just be no thought, really. There's no thought doing that. It's not really super activated. I love just the I am, I am, I am, I am, just I. All right. So finding examples of those, just trying them on, sitting with it, wondering, being willing. Remember that? Willing to be curious about I am good enough, or my thoughts are just not good enough in the moment. And they aren't even necessarily my thoughts, they just appeared as a strategy to work with. Wow, could I not be lovable? I need to fix that. So many people talk about their social anxiety when they were younger and then trying to get thin to like at least be looking good, you know? And I'm sure that I felt the same way. But the thing that was anxious was on the inside before the effort to have the body get right. There's something to be afraid of. There's something to be afraid of. I'm not good enough. I won't be loved. I won't be loved. So powerful to just hold these turnarounds, and those you could also sit with for a few days. That's a good question. And cat breathing. And I'm here. There must be something good or right about me. I'm good enough to be aware that there's something going on with my thoughts about food. Awesome. And cat, I'm sane. I'm healthy. I'm present enough. Presence is present. There's nothing to fix. Breathing. So what would be an example to support I? That's a very good question. Because it feels to me like anyone can answer that one who wants, but I love just it's like, feels like something's here, right? There's the one talking, chatter, 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 not good enough, da, 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 lots of opinions, worried about food and eating, all those things, everything, all of that. Thoughts, stories, telling a story, going into the future, going into the past. I just feels like, feeling the life force in your body. I also love this question. If you've been in Eating Peace, I ask it all the time. How do your hands feel about reality, or how do your hands feel about that situation where you thought you weren't good enough? What is your hands' opinion? What are your hands' opinions of you? They're just coming along for the ride. They don't mind. So just love saying, the old way of thinking, that old way, I'm not good enough. It just has so many different ways that it can be articulated. They don't love me. I'm separate. I'm separate. I'm separate. So I want too much, I ate too much, I'm greedy, I'm not good enough, all those things, the list, all the ways it can be described. And then I decide I need to control or punish or follow a plan and make sure I'm doing it right. And I always like to say with people, it doesn't mean never have a plan that works for you for eating, and never eliminate certain things, or like whoever mentioned about medical things. We know what the plan is. And sometimes that changes over time, and sometimes it relaxes, and when the right time is. It's okay. It will hold you. But I need to do this the right way, and then I'll feel peaceful and happy and lovable. And it, of course, doesn't work. We don't feel peaceful and happy and lovable just because we got thin or did the plan. Ever. I never did. Still felt anxious. And I like noticing it's like violence and control, the belief, violence and control and war against myself will lead to peace. I'll suffer and then I'll be happy later on, instead of right now. Right now, I'll get enlightened later, and right now I'll suffer. So just this question, it's like, who would you be without the thought? What if you could be okay with what you just are inherently, just at what you show up as right now, the raw material that's you, human being here right now. And I just find it's just a willingness to notice it. We'll think, oh my God, I got to stay here. Oh, I got to keep being in the present moment. Oh, I better know. What about, I've just got a flash of what I should do later. It's okay that that's even happening. It's just noticing that's happening in the present moment. Talking in your head is talking, happening in the present moment. It doesn't mean you have to do it, because we already don't do everything the mind tells us to do. Nice to notice. I just like saying, for me, really rigid diet plans can make things very complicated. So I like reminding everyone, or just being with, what's worked for me is something that feels like you could do for the rest of your life. So you're not, dieting usually means I'm going to do this so that I lose weight and get to the right place. So just every day, if this was just balanced, peaceful eating today, right now, enough, eating enough, Because I used to I think I was good if I didn't eat enough. So just important in there to share in the midst of all of this. So, all right. Katie says, you are the storyteller. You have become the stories you told yourself, and you are what lives prior to every story. Story equals suffering. Story of being lovable enough, being desirable and interesting enough, being getting enough attention, support. It'll be just like, oh, I can't be enough just the way I am. All like, this is just not, it's not good enough. So boring or mediocre or meh. But that's the story of suffering. Inquiry, no story, no suffering. But freedom is possible in every moment. Freedom is possible in every moment. And I really just want to share with all of you that it doesn't mean you have to be like vigilant about being in the present moment. Just when it's really, really strong, I'm not good enough. Can I absolutely know it's true? Let's get examples of how I am, and just noticing when you get really scared about something and start going in the future. I love noticing. That is going to happen. That terrible thing that I think is going to happen is going to happen. Is that true? And this might help too. Looking in the mirror, looking at yourself eating, seeing the movie play of what you ate before you were on this inquiry, this webinar. That is you that did that. That is you. Is that true? What's fun about that is just noticing, yeah, I'm not I'm not in denial about my activity and my behavior, but it is over. It's like a replay. And we just grab and get so tight and so shameful about that. So now it's now. Nice question mark here. Question mark about food and eating. Freedom. Freedom. So I am probably going to have an eating peace retreat online. I don't know quite what that looks like yet, but since we're in the time of the virus, I like thinking of this as a virus in the mind. So we'll do it with the mind. You know, maybe our bodies don't have to go anywhere. We'll see how it works. Just to mention, just to watch for that. Like there's no place like home, which is just rooted in the ground. If you can just get a pause, 60 seconds before moving towards those thoughts, I'm not good enough, and then that really fuel wanting to eat food. Wonderful. Let's get a little pause. It might take far less than you think. Like your mind might say, oh, years, I've been suffering for this for years. I've been doing this for years, so many years, so many years. Why am I doing it again? Like somebody mentioned. Not ever seeing that there's been you've also stopped over and over again, and you've relaxed over and over again. You've gone to sleep over and over again. But like the mind will be like, I don't care about all that. I just care about all the stuff that I did that was wrong. But just to rest, no place like home, noticing how your hands feel, how your body feels, how the life force in you feels without the thought, and just that it is a very stressful thought that brings suffering. So when you're telling yourself all that mean stuff, it is just incredibly stressful. It's kind of, I was going to say it's dangerous. That makes it sound like something terrible will happen, but yeah, you know, it's sort of like burning yourself, holding on to something and letting it burn you, and in a way that is damaging. So just to catch that, you know, oh, I'm having that really dark thing, not good enough. And it often will lead to wanting to eat and wanting to not eat almost at the same time. And when you have that battle going, binging and starving happen when you're off balance in your mind, and then in your food and in your body. So just something to share. Many of you have read it already, but that link goes to a little eating peace ebook. And if I remember right, it's got 7 thoughts that you can just consider to question, that are helpful to question also in this whole process of eating. So I hope this goes well for you. I hope it's very helpful, everybody. I really appreciate you coming. It's just beautiful to be in the work and in the work with you. So Nancy, thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights. I ate lunch while here today. I love that. That's awesome. Notice, notice, notice. What a gift. What a gift. You're very welcome, everybody. You can do this. You can do this. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Nothing's missing. Just remember that. All right. So glad you all made it here. I'm glad I made it here. Oh, sweet cat, 23 years old. I'm so glad I found you. Yeah, I would have liked to find my future me when I was 23. Oh, yeah. Awesome, everybody. Let's see, I might even be able to, can I do that? Take everyone off mute. Stop sharing. And just say goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace.
Bye, Grace. Thank you.
Yeah, good to be with you all. So sweet.
Thank you, Grace.
Bye.
Bye.
Let me know how it goes.
Thank you.
Right.
Love
Bye.
you.
Love you all.